You know that feeling, right? You blink and you're an hour deep into some internet rabbit hole. You feel like you've learned a million things, but at the same time, absolutely nothing. We're swimming in this endless ocean of information, but what's the infinite scroll actually doing to our finite minds? Well, let's dig in.
I mean, it seems obvious, doesn't it? More options means more freedom, which means more happiness. But what if that's just not true? What if having more choices isn't liberating at all, but actually kind of paralyzing?
So to get to the bottom of this, researchers back in 2000 set up this really simple but kind of brilliant experiment in a grocery store. And the subject of their study? Jam. Yep, jam. They wanted to see if the number of jam choices a person had would change whether or not they actually bought any.
Okay, so here's how they did it. On some days, they set up a tasting booth that was just massive, a huge spread with 24 different artisanal jams. Then on other days, they had a much smaller, more curated selection, just 6 different flavors. The question was pretty simple. Which booth was going to sell more jam?
And the results were, honestly, pretty shocking. Now that big display with 24 jars, it definitely got more people to stop and look. But only 3% of them actually bought a jar. Compare that to the smaller display, a whopping 30% of the people who stopped walked away with jam. That is a 10 times bigger conversion rate.
And this, my friends, is what psychologists call the paradox of choice. See, when we're faced with just too many options, our brains kind of short-circuit. Instead of feeling empowered, we get anxious about making the wrong call, and we're way more likely to just walk away. Choose nothing at all. Of course, this paradox isn't really just about jam. It's actually a perfect metaphor for our digital lives. I mean, that aisle of 24 jams has absolutely nothing on the infinite, endless aisles of the internet. We've gone from a few choices to billions of them, and that same paralyzing effect is happening, just on a much, much bigger scale.
And this is where things get even trickier. The tech thinker Clay Shirky made this incredible point. He said the real issue isn't information overload. It's what he calls filter failure. Think about it. The jam store, at the very least, had a professional buyer who filtered all the possible jams in the world down to just 24. Online, there are no filters.
So what exactly is filter failure? Well, before the internet, it cost a lot of money to publish a book or broadcast a TV show. That cost acted as a natural filter. Not just anything could get through. But now, it costs $0 to publish something online, so all those old gatekeepers are gone, and the filters that used to separate the good stuff from the noise have basically crumbled. We're left to sort through this digital flood all by ourselves. So, what is this constant, unfiltered fire hose of information actually doing to our brains? I mean, how does the human mind even begin to cope with having the entire world's library plus every single opinion right there in our pocket? Well, one of the biggest changes is a really fundamental shift in how our memory even works. We've become absolute experts at remembering not the information itself, but the pathway to go and find it again. Researchers have a name for this. It's called the Google effect. Our brains are incredibly efficient, right? They know there's no point in wasting precious storage space on a fact you can look up in 2 seconds. So it offloads the what, the actual piece of info, and instead it remembers the where. The internet has basically become this giant external hard drive for our own minds.
And this leads to a really dangerous illusion of understanding. Like this parent on Reddit pointed out, having endless facts right at your fingertips makes you feel incredibly knowledgeable. We get that quick little dopamine hit from finding an answer, but we're often missing the deeper context that's needed to turn that random fact into actual, genuine understanding.
And that brings us to a super critical distinction we need to make. In our constant quest to be informed, we've started confusing the act of consuming information with gaining knowledge. And we almost never make it to that crucial final step, wisdom. So try to think of it like a pyramid. Down at the very bottom, you've got information. This is just raw data, random facts, headlines. The next level up is knowledge. This is where you start to organize that information, you understand its context, you see how things connect. And then way up at the very top, that's wisdom. That's the deep, nuanced understanding that only comes from integrating knowledge with real experience and reflection. Here's the problem. The infinite scroll is basically designed to trap us at the bottom of that pyramid. It gives us that constant, addictive hit for finding new information, but it stops us from doing the harder, slower work of connecting the dots and building real, lasting knowledge. Okay, so how do we break out of this cycle? How do we start climbing that pyramid?
Well, the answer isn't to just throw our phones in the ocean. It's about becoming way, way more intentional about how we use them.
Let's go all the way back to that jam study. The problem wasn't the jam, right? It was the overwhelming, infinite-seeming display. So the solution isn't to stop consuming information, it's to stop wandering aimlessly through the infinite supermarket and instead build your own small, carefully curated shelf with only the things that truly matter to you.
This is really the heart of what experts call deep work. It means literally scheduling focused, single-tasking time on your calendar like it's a meeting you absolutely cannot miss. It means learning to embrace boredom, letting your mind wander on a walk without a podcast plugged in because that's where the real insights happen. It means taking just 5 minutes at the end of the day to reflect on what you actually learned, turning that fleeting information into something that sticks. It's all about being intentional with your single most valuable resource, your focus.
I love how Kurt Steinhorst puts it. He says being indisruptible just means you recognize your own limits. You understand that your attention is precious and finite, and you choose consciously to invest it only in the things that actually move you toward your real goals and values.
And that really leaves us with one final and maybe the most important question. In a world that is screaming for you to consume everything, the most powerful choice you can make isn't what you'll pay attention to. It's what you will purposefully and intentionally choose to ignore.